So the last thing I want to talk about here was the Southern Poverty Law Center has come out and said that black separatism is okay, kids. There's nothing wrong with this. We should all endorse it. And that's how I'm gonna phrase it, because that's how it reads. I know that's not how they want it to be.
Isn't black separatism considered in America by the FBI to be a form of terrorism?
Yes,
Right.
because it is. Like,
Okay.
I want to separate from the United States, and the separation I'm going to do is on the basis of my race, and the only people of my race will be allowed inside my separated state. Yeah, sounds pretty bad. Sounds
like the sort of thing they'll have on CNN.
Sounds like the kind of thing the SPLC should
Richard
keep track
Spencer, black separatist, calm discussion.
When's the debate happening, Jake Tapper? Set it up.
Turns out they agree on almost everything.
Just Don Lemon in the middle, like. Anyway, so this is them on Twitter saying that they are collapsing the black separatist listing of their hate map. So for anyone who doesn't know, the Southern Poverty Law Center has like a hate map in which they list hate groups, their wording. Black separatism was born out of a valid anger against a very real, historic, and systemic oppression.
Right.
Okay, so
that justifies terrorism.
if you can say your terrorist group, who has an extremist viewpoint, is justified, then the Southern Poverty Law Center will take you off their map, and you are valid in what you're doing.
ISIS are typing furiously.
Several people are
Drone
typing.
strikes, Palestinian kids. They know all the buzzwords that you guys react to.
Like, where does this go?
And just before we start as well, I just want to make it clear that our official position is we don't want racial separatism, we don't like race politics, and we don't like terrorism.
No. But Southern Poverty Law Center disagrees.
Yeah.
They think a certain kind is okay.
We're pro-incorporative democracies.
So then we're going to get up the article here.
Radical position these days.
You can read the whole thing in your own time, but I've taken out the best bits just to go over, because it's amazing. So they say this decision comes after internal and external conversations. So they just had a lot of conversations with woke activists that came to this decision. Black separatist groups land on the Southern Poverty Law Center's hate map because they propagate anti-Semitic, anti-LGBTQ, and male supremacist views. Not because they oppose a white supremacist power structure. You notice what's missing there? Not because they want a black ethno-state, but because they're anti-Semites, anti-gay, and
not because they're terrorists.
Man?
Not because they're terrorists. Not because they want race war. No, that's not a problem. That's all okay. It's the anti-Semitism and anti-LGBTQ views.
You'll also notice they don't mention their anti-white views.
No.
I mean,
No,
if you
that's
read
fine.
any black separatist literature,
obviously,
most of it is about whitey, but not according to the Southern Poverty Law Center.
Well, I mean, a fair amount of it is about Jews and gays as well, to be honest.
It is, and I'm not denying it, it's not. But that is not the main thrust. The main thrust is against this white supremacist state and, so on and so forth.
I never thought I'd have to spend so much time defending Jews, actually. I assumed that places like the SPLC and the ADL would be doing a good enough job of this, that I wouldn't have to weigh in and say, by the way, maybe persecuting Jews is bad.
Well, you've got some stiff opposition from the woke department.
Yeah, I mean, I guess they've really got... guy criticised Israel, so I guess fine. Anyway, let's carry on.
So they go on here. So it is important to acknowledge the moment we are in and the incredible efforts of groups such as the Movement for Black Lives. So they're directly endorsing Black Lives Matter. But they don't want to explicitly say it because I think they know it's a political group, and they'll lose their charity status probably or something like this. The continued police violence directed against the black community and a lack of justice for the victims shows plainly the struggle for black lives is not over. So...
That is horrifically framed. Police violence directed at the black community implies a directed will from the police to victimize black people. As if the police, as an institution, want to do this.
But I think they'll be happy to accept that that's their viewpoint. What they won't be happy to accept, which is what they've just done, is lay out, this is a statement on black separatist groups, but groups like BLM shouldn't be included as separatist groups. That's why we're just classifying separatist groups. So they're literally saying that BLM is a black separatist group here, that they're saying they should not be treated as a hate group, but they do because they engage in anti-police brutality. Okay, based on Red Pill SPLC, I guess. BLM are terrorists. Fine. So they then go on to say that the SPLC intelligence map, more specifically, recognizes the common language shared by our black separatist listing and federal attempts to criminalize black activism.
Jesus.
So this
So
is
yeah, literally they're saying, well, basically, Black Lives Matter, black terrorists, separatists. The Venn diagram is getting smaller and smaller.
therefore we're going to just say that terrorists don't exist.
Therefore, it's no longer terrorism.
Interesting. So they say this part in response to the FBI, as you
Yeah.
said, list black
Yeah.
separatism as a terrorist group, because it is.
Yeah, yeah.
And then they say this is contributing to a false dichotomy, and it does not serve the SPLC's mission for racial equity.
Oh, right, okay.
Okay, so that's the reason here is, as you say, the Venn diagram's getting
Yeah, yeah.
smaller, and they're panicking. And they then go on for more reasons for the change. So that they say that this one's actually fair, which is that a lot of these groups that they're looking at are not entirely black. So in
Sure.
the sense that they're not uniquely, but that's kind of
But they are
slippery.
politically black, aren't they?
That's one problem. But also, my experience of looking at what they would call white supremacist groups, they list, I think, the Proud Boys as a white supremacist group. The leader's not white, so are they no longer that kind of extremist?
And they also don't avow white supremacy,
That's more important. Yep.
weirdly. But I mean, like, a lot of these black separatist groups do avow anti-Semitism
And black nationalism.
and black
Which is
nationalism.
kind of the point. So they say these groups are very much part of activist spaces, which is a condemnation of the activist spaces.
Black Lives Matter is riddled with these anti-Semitic black supremacists. Okay.
Therefore, we're just going to stop saying that they're terrorists. And while that should be exposed for their harmful rhetoric and be held accountable within the activist space that they inhabit, so they are there,
Yeah, yeah.
and we think they should be
They
going on.
accept that there.
The SPLC does not believe criminalizing and over-policing is an acceptable solution. Huh? Like, we're talking about the terrorists here. If we're going to criminalize them, that's fine,
I
surely.
mean, do they understand that it's the black identity extremists, the black separatists, who have been attacking Jews in New York? I mean, there are loads of videos of it, just random attacks in the street.
Well, they do. They know that they're anti-Semitic in the opening statements.
Yeah.
But they're still running defense for them.
That's wild.
So they mention here that, unfortunately, the FBI had a black identity extremist label for monitoring domestic terrorism.
Unfortunately.
Unfortunately. What?
Well, I mean, I guess it's unfortunate that there's domestic terror in the United States. I agree. I mean, that is unfortunate.
And then they go on to say, so they take a quote from a former FBI agent, and I don't want to read the whole thing because it's kind of boring the way he
Yeah.
phrases it, but it's essentially just using the label black identity extremist or black separatist,
Yeah.
he thinks creates an irrational fear of black activist movements, that people become obsessed that maybe they're separatists. And to be honest, I can actually have some sympathy with that position.
Okay.
That if he sees some loudmouth activist group
Yeah.
making noise, he could make the assumption maybe they're extremists.
Yeah.
But then the same runs for all other groups. Any Muslim group, any group mainly made up of white people.
The Proud Boys.
The Proud Boys is the best example.
Yeah.
So how is this not true of white groups? Or groups that
Or
are
any
perceived to
groups,
have
yeah.
been white supremacist,
Yeah.
like from the SPLC. So they then go on saying, dropping this listing, we can lead by example and be able to contribute to a more accurate understanding of violent extremism by ignoring an accurate understanding of violent extremism. Good job, lads.
Yeah.
One that foregrounds white supremacist extremism as the most dangerous terror threat to national security. Right, that's not your job.
Yeah.
You are not the CIA, you are not the FBI, you are there to list them, not to stop them.
But I like the way that you've decided on which one you think is the most dangerous, and now you need to sort of kind of gerrymander the statistics. So it's like, right, okay, well, we're going to move that into column B, so we just consider that all there, and then, oh, look at that, white supremacy is the most important thing. Don't worry about the rest of it, because that's in the special category that we actually don't look at.
So it's like, I said earlier, but with the equivalent of the UK, Islamist terrorism is the number one threat in the UK.
Yeah.
They make up all the prescribed groups, you just look
Yeah.
at the list yourself. But we do have far-right groups. So it would be like saying, right, we're not going to list white terrorism in the UK, white separatist terrorism, because Islamic terrorism is the main threat. That's how pathetic what they're doing
Yeah.
is here.
Yeah, you wouldn't want that.
They also go on to say that the black separatist listing created a colour of lines bias, separating hate and extremism by race. Well, that's what they're doing, the people you're describing, you idiots.
Yeah.
And granting the appearance of a false equivalency between equal hate of race on both sides. So the idea that a black separatist and a white separatist are similar. Yeah, they are.
How are they not?
So they say the hate is not equal. Black separatism was born out of a valid anger against a very real historical and systemic oppression.
It's okay when we do it, got it.
Yeah, but
That's
then
special pleading.
But then what? Like, I just turn around. Like, my government in the UK, if you apply for the diversity internship that the civil service runs, government run, they have a discrimination there on the basis of being white. They will rank you lower. You cannot apply.
Yeah.
So you have to be disabled or something. But if you're black or brown skin, you can apply without being disabled. Well, okay. If I set up a white separatist group in the UK now, the SPLC will back me, presumably. That's what they're saying.
But the thing is, like, the fact that they're giving a reason, right? It's like, oh, well, it's born out of valid anger against very real historical and systemic oppression. Well, that's a subjective judgment. That's if you feel that this is valid, then okay. But I mean, the white nationalists, the white separatists would surely be like, well, we think that we're valid as well. And anyone who's sympathetic to us would obviously say, well, they're valid. And so you've got no objective standard. So you can't apply the principle equally. So they're literally just saying, we're going to do it one way and we don't care, and the other way and we don't care. It's not fair.
Doesn't make any sense. So they then go on to say that the part of the reason for this is that we don't live in a black supremacist society, but we do live in a white supremacist society, according to them. Therefore, this is fine, but it doesn't make any sense. And then they admit, yes, some black nationalists have committed violence against Jewish communities, but those are fueled by anti-Semitism, not separatism. I'm not sure about that, buddy.
What's the difference? Like, are they saying, okay, we want Jews around, but we just want to be able to bully them? You know, is that what they're saying? It's not separatism, but it is anti-Semitism.
Yeah. Wanting separation from a society that has historically and systematically oppressed black communities isn't extremism. That's a direct quote.
Okay. Yeah,
so
okay.
if you are a racial group being oppressed, you're allowed to argue for separation, and the SPLC is like, that's not even extremist. It shouldn't be illegal.
It's a moderate centrist position.
That's a centrist position now.
The black identity extremists are centrist.
I didn't realise J-Reg was running the SPLC. So they then want more accurate representations of what these groups are. Yeah. Black separatist groups earn their place amongst our hate listings, not for their calls for separatism, because that's fine, but rather for how entrenched these groups are in anti-Semitic, anti-LGBTQ, misogynistic, xenophobic rhetoric.
How is it you found yourself defending anti-Semitic, anti-gay, anti-woman, xenophobic terror groups, SPLC? When you're in defense of these groups, maybe you've done something wrong.
Yeah.
Maybe you've made a bad decision.
Going forward, groups formerly designated as black separatists will be characterized by anti-Semitism, anti-LGBTQ, male supremacy, and whatever additional ideological categories most accurately describe their offending beliefs.
We don't like what they think. Okay, gotcha, SPLC.
While these groups are not as great a threat as white nationalist groups, they are still hateful, use divisive rhetoric, and often authoritarian leaders that encourage anti-LGBTQ, anti-Semitic, and misogynist beliefs. You'll see there, again, in every one of those, they left out the term anti-white.
Yes.
Which is the main thrust of
because that's an acceptable political bigotry to hold.
This has harmful effects on other marginalised groups, such as queer and trans people. The last bit, again, no mention of white.
As long as we're getting to the real victims.
Yeah. And they do mention, and I do want to say that, like, their focus on anti-Semitism and these other groups is not unjustified. They mention the Nation of Islam's leader, Louis Farrakhan, saying that he's not an anti-Semite, he's just anti-termite.
Yeah.
His quote, YouTube, not me.
Yeah.
And then, various other things. But the main point for me here is that if someone is attacked for being white, the SPLC thinks that's fine.
Yeah.
They don't care. They're
not
explicitly saying that here.
Yeah.
But if you're attacked for being a Jew or being gay, then they care.
Because it's the intersectional paradigm. It's all couched in the language of power relations. And so if you are a white supremacist society, you're a dominant white society, then therefore they are de facto definitionally the oppressors, and any minority is definitionally oppressed.
But this is something you've been saying, and anti-progressives have been saying for 10 years.
Yeah.
This is what we think they believe. They are honestly like this.
Yes.
And everyone's sort of been able to bat it off like, no, but they do say they're just anti-hate. They are now explicitly stating it. If someone commits a hate crime against someone who is white, not a hate crime. In fact, not even extremism. A moderate centrist position to do this.
Wow.
And I just wanted to give some quick examples of moderate centrist positions, according to the SPLC. So we'll just start with the shooting of Dallas police officers. So
this was wasn't this guy a Young Turk subscriber?
I think he might have been, yeah. So if you get this up, this is a Guardian article reporting. I'm just going to use leftist outlets because, I want to remember how pathetic our enemies are here, the left-wingers.
Yep.
Like, they'll try and cover this up anytime they can. So this is 2016. They admit that he wanted to kill white people. So he spoke about wanting to kill especially white officers. The police gave evidence to this. He also liked on Facebook black nationalist organizations such as the New Black Panther Party, Nation of Islam, and Black Riders Liberation Army, 3 groups which are listed by the SPLC as hate groups.
But not because they hate white people, but because they're anti-Semitic.
So he killed 5 cops, injured 9 other cops, and injured 2 civilians. But you'll notice there, the groups are listed by the SPLC as hate groups in this article. And that's something that happened in 2016.
Yeah, and now the SPLC have changed their policy, so they're no longer hate groups.
And then
Amazing.
they're just covering up their tracks for the future crimes that will be committed. The next one is just Vox reporting on the famous video of a disabled white kid, I think it was 18 actually, who was kidnapped and then tortured. And it was live streamed
to
Facebook.
Yelling F Donald Trump.
F white people.
Yep.
And this is Vox trying to cover for it. They're saying that it looks like an anti-Trump attack. Not sure I'd phrase it as anti-Trump. Explained. And then it's like, it could be a potential hate crime. You can literally hear in the video them saying F white people as they torture this guy.
So some poor kid.
So they were arrested and they got...
This was a brutal thing to watch as well. For anyone who didn't, like, they're cutting his head and stuff like this. It's just awful.
I have a description. The victim was bound, gagged, beaten, taunted, and part of his scalp was removed with a knife.
Yeah.
He was also also forced to kiss the floor and drink from a toilet bowl. The attackers can be heard shouting F Trump, F white people. They forced the victim to say F Trump once. And once the perpetrators contacted the victim's mother, they demanded a $300 ransom for her son. Although the Facebook live stream only lasted 28 minutes, the victim was tied for hours. So this guy was tied up for hours.
And they're so proud of what they did. They live streamed it to Facebook.
Yeah, they wanted praise for this.
Amazing.
Thankfully, they were arrested. They all accepted a plea of guilty on the basis that they had kidnapped someone and they had committed a hate crime. Yeah. So this is a hate crime. Vox, potential. They got 3 years, 7 years, and 8 years, and the other one got 200 hours community service. Right. And then the last one here I wanted to talk about was another shooting. So this is the Guardian trying to cover up for it again, saying it was described as an anti-white hate crime, but the truth is complicated. Well, no, it's not, because we have the admittance from the guy who did it. Liars. So this guy shot 4 white people to death on the basis that he wanted to kill white people. He took the stand and testified that he already knew he was wanted for one murder, so he might as well take down as many white men as possible. That's not a hate crime, according to the Guardian. That's complicated.
Yeah.
There's also a part.
There's a lot to discuss here, you see, says the Guardian.
Part of this attack, he ran over to a truck driver, and upon noticing the truck driver was described as Hispanic, he decided not to shoot him. Okay, so what was the basis for this crime?
Well, it's obviously race.
And then he's also quoted here saying, "All I know was that white supremacy has to die, and the people who benefit most from white supremacy are white men." So he went out to kill white men. So he was convicted of 4 murders, 4 attempted murders, and got life in prison. But noticed again here, Muhammad's social media posts made multiple references to terms used by the Nation of Islam, a black separatist organization labeled as a hate group from the Southern Poverty Law Center. This is them. This is the reason, I reckon. They're getting embarrassed that every time a BLM or an anti-white terrorist attack takes place, they're getting name dropped as the ones criminalizing him and proving that it's anti-white.
Oh, it's very unprogressive.
They're embarrassing the progressive movement.
They are.
So now they're scrubbing the idea that there's any such thing as black nationalism or black separatism.
It's all just Black Lives Matter, you see, folks.